Welcome to Misericordia's Fundamentals Refresh Series, Expo Part 3, Staff-Related Policies. Human Rights. In order to support and protect the residents in a way that still promotes their ability to be independent and treated with dignity and respect, you must know their rights. Residents have the right to know their rights and be informed of them in a way that they understand, be treated with dignity and respect, have their privacy and confidentiality maintained, speak for themselves, say no, make choices, participate in the planning of their own care, programs, education, and recreation, manage their own money, have meaningful relationships, and the right to be in an environment free from harm, punishment, chemical restraints, abuse, and neglect. Is this a human rights violation? A resident refuses to engage with the staff and work on goals because they are focused on watching television. The staff decides to turn the television off in an attempt to gain the resident's attention. Yes, this is a human rights violation because while it is very important for the resident to work on their goals, they have the right to choose to watch television instead of working on their goals, and staff are not allowed to deny them of that right. Is this a human rights violation? A staff notices that a resident is resistant to drinking water, so they decide to only offer water at meals instead of options to try to get the resident to drink more water. Yes, this is a human rights violation because the resident has the right to have options to choose from. Deciding to limit the resident's drink options without direction from a doctor or nutritionist violates their right to choose. Is this a human rights violation? A staff frequently decides to select a resident's clothes for the day because it helps the shift go by faster. Yes, this is a human rights violation because the resident has a right to select their own clothes, even if they need assistance from staff. The staff and resident should select the clothing together. Abuse, neglect, Rule 50, and mandated reporter. Every employee is a mandated reporter. You must report anything you see, hear, or suspect to your supervisor immediately. If you are uncomfortable reporting the incident to your area supervisor, you may choose to contact your director, AVP, or OIG, the Office of Inspector General, at 800-368-1463. If you work in areas that provide services to children such as Macaulay, please report to DCFS by calling 1-800-252-2873. There are 5 major forms of abuse. Physical abuse is any deliberate contact that causes physical harm or injury. Sexual abuse is any contact of a sexual nature or intimate nature between a staff and a resident, not including basic hygiene care. Mental abuse is the use of demeaning, intimidating, or threatening words, signs, gestures, or actions by staff toward a resident that results in upsetting them. Financial exploitation is staff using the resident's money, property, or assets for their own benefit. And neglect, which is failure to provide adequate medical care or maintenance that causes a resident pain or discomfort, or could have done so. Egregious neglect is when the neglect is so severe it causes serious harm, resulting in hospitalization or death. There are several important things to remember when making a report of abuse or neglect. Your identity will not be disclosed when making a report. You cannot rely on anyone else to make a report. Do not discuss the incident with anyone besides the person you are reporting to. Failure to report is unacceptable and could result in disciplinary action. Your job is not to investigate it, but to simply report. You do not have to be sure the abuse is occurring. There are 3 possible outcomes of an investigation. An investigation may be substantiated, meaning there was more than enough evidence found. It may be unsubstantiated, meaning there was some evidence but not enough. Or it may be unfounded, which means there was no evidence. Substantiated outcomes of some types of abuse result in administrative findings and will be public knowledge on the Illinois Healthcare Worker Registry. These would be cases of physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial exploitation, egregious neglect, and material obstruction of an investigation. What do we mean by material obstruction of an investigation? Obstructing an abuse and neglect investigation is a reportable finding. This is the deliberate interference with an abuse or neglect investigation, including withholding or altering documentation or recorded evidence, influencing, threatening, or impeding witness testimony, providing false information, failing to cooperate. If you have reason to believe that someone is obstructing an investigation, please report this immediately. You can report it to the investigator if you know who that is. If you don't, report to a supervisor that you heard something and need to speak with an investigator. Do not share information with anyone other than the designated investigator.
Behavior management. Behavior is anything and everything a person says or does and the way in which people respond to their environment. It's important to remember that behavior is a form of communication. There are two types of behavior: adaptive behavior, and that is socially appropriate behavior like asking for help or requesting a break when the environment is noisy. And there's also maladaptive behavior, and that's an inappropriate way of getting a need met. And some examples of that would be hitting, kicking, yelling, calling people names, spitting. Behavior always has a function or a reason for occurring. There are 4 functions of behavior, and these include escape, attention, access to tangibles, and sensory automatic. Escape/avoidance. The resident may not enjoy a task, or they're attempting to avoid something or someone. Maybe there's a peer that the resident thinks is kind of loud, and the resident wants to be in a space away from that peer. The person might be engaging in the behavior to get focused attention from people around them. This could be attention from a peer or a staff member, and it might include attention in the form of proximity, i.e. the staff member stops what he or she is doing in order to go to the individual's side, or the staff member or the person's peers tell them to stop doing whatever they're doing, or other people become visibly frustrated or upset when the resident does this behavior. We also might look at something tangible, so the person might be engaging in a problem behavior to get a preferred item or participate in an enjoyable activity. For example, they might refuse to eat what's being served for a meal in efforts to get a more preferred substitute. And then sensory is the last function. This happens when the person behaves in a specific way because it feels good to them, i.e. the person may throw an item because they're feeling anxious, and throwing that item is a release of their frustration. Each BSP includes proactive and reactive strategies, and both are really important. Proactive strategies give us ways to make sure a person has what they need and want on a daily basis. In this section, you'll note we're working on teaching an appropriate skill to replace the problem behavior, i.e. we might want to teach a person who screams and throws things when they're feeling overwhelmed that they can hand staff a card that says break on it. Or they can say, I need some alone time, depending on their communication skill level. An example of a picture schedule that can help reduce anxiety and remind the person of the expectations for the day. Reactive strategies are instructions on what to do to keep a person and those around them safe during a behavioral incident. And they're useful when a person is distressed or anxious and more likely to display a challenging behavior. An example of a good reactive strategy might be to give a resident a prompt to engage in a safe activity, like, hey, please walk with me, or escorting them to an area that's quieter. Reactive strategies are basically designed to keep a person and those around them safe during a behavioral incident. Why is it important to document behavior? The priority is to keep everyone safe and respond effectively to the problem behavior. But once you've done that, we want to ensure the person is making progress. If not, we can modify the BSP. Also, we want to provide solid data to the person's psychiatrist who prescribes and or adjusts psychotropic medication. We're basing, the psychiatrist is basing his opinions on this data, so it's really important that we provide him accurate data. Also, we want to ensure appropriate resources for the person. So staffing levels, materials, and we want to make sure they have the proper behavioral supports. Documenting maladaptive behavior. What should you document? Document any behavioral incident that impacts the quality of life for the resident. For example, if a resident is refusing to eat, this should be documented. Document any behavior that's unusual or that is interfering with day-to-day life. For example, if a resident is refusing to participate in self-care routines like bathing or showering. And remember that there's an extra step in awards when you track a target behavior. Remember to track B if the behavior occurred on your shift, and then you want to fill out the behavioral occurrences form, which lets us know how many times that behavior happened on your shift. You're just going to click one more time on that B, and it'll have another drop-down menu for you. In the case of a behavior that is self-injurious or directed at another resident, complete a behavior report. Document the observed behavior. For example, say the individual hit the wall 3 times with an open palm, rather than the person was really mad. What did you see that made you think the person was mad? Write those specific actions in the report. And then document the observed behavior as soon as it's possible to do so. It's human to forget details as the time passes, so you want to try to make sure information you provide is as accurate as possible. Here are 2 descriptions, and we want to look at which would be better. Example 1, Sally said she was going to get me, and then she came after me. She wanted to hit me because she was frustrated. Or example 2, Sally said, I'm going to get you. She then reached out her hand and attempted to hit my shoulder. I moved to the side and was not hit. Sally followed my prompt to walk to another room. If you pick scenario 2, you are correct. This writer used specific objective language, meaning exactly what the client stated and which action she took. She also responded to that behavior and said how she did that, and then she also said how the resident responded to her intervention. It's very important to note how you responded to the behavior when you're writing the behavior report. For example, I redirected the resident to a different activity, and that will help cues supervisors and the behavior team to best understand the situation and will help us to narrow down how to most effectively intervene when the resident engages in the problem behavior in the future. A good rule of thumb is always write down what happened right before the behavior and right after the behavior. Here are a few things to remember when you're attempting to de-escalate someone who is demonstrating problem behavior. Remember to be respectful when someone is exhibiting maladaptive behavior. You may find yourself becoming frustrated when incidents occur, but your job is to assist the residents with managing their feelings and communicating appropriately. You must model calm. Don't talk about the behavior in front of the person or other residents. Doing so is a breach of confidentiality and could serve to escalate the person's behavior. Think about how upsetting it would be if you heard someone talking about your refusal to clean your house last night. When reporting a behavior, ask to speak to the supervisor in private. You and the supervisor need to maintain confidentiality and discuss the incident in a space that allows for focus and clear communication.
HIPAA.
HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This is a federal law that was created in the 90s to protect individuals' right to privacy regarding their medical records and health information. It is updated regularly to reflect new issues and changes in technology so that the Act continues to protect everyone as intended despite the changes in our world. PHI, in reference to HIPAA, stands for Protected Health Information. It includes an individual's demographic information such as their diagnosis, any treatments they receive, any medications that they are taking. For individuals that we support, their health status information even includes the fact that they are receiving services from Misericordia because Misericordia is an organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Protected health information also includes pictures or audio or video taken of the residents. Pictures, audio, or video taken of the residents cannot be shared unless there is consent in place for that picture or video and for a particular purpose. If you are in a role at Misericordia that does not include direct care of the residents, you may not have varying levels of information about the residents, but you do need to protect what information you have access to. Be sure to secure all resident information, reports, and billing records from public view. Computer screens should not be facing public view. Screensavers should be set to activate within a certain time frame. Faxes should be sent with a cover sheet so information is not casually exposed. Items sent to the printers that have resident information on it should be picked up promptly. Items sent via interoffice mail with resident information should be in a sealed envelope. Do not include protected health information in any text or email sent outside of Misericordia, even talking to the guardian. Texting or email does not meet security requirements required by HIPAA and should not be used. Discard any paper that has resident information on it by shredding or storing it in a secure location until it can be picked up by our recycling department for proper disposal. It cannot be put in a regular trash bin or recycling bins. This would be a HIPAA violation. Technology is certainly a factor these days, but there are some things you must abide by in relation to work. Never use your own phone or camera to take pictures of any residents unless you are specifically asked to do so by a supervisor to capture outings or activities. If you are asked to take photos of residents with your personal phone, you must delete the original photo after sending it to the supervisor or queue, and you must delete the sent text or email. Otherwise, it's a HIPAA violation. In reference to social media, you should never post information about the residents, and this includes written information, pictures, or videos. You should never show any photos or videos of any residents to anyone under any circumstances. Some of the most common HIPAA violations now include inappropriate social media usage or disclosures, sharing photos or videos of residents, posting or gossiping or disclosing more information about resident interactions, and deleting them or only saying them in a form that you believe is quote unquote private are perhaps some of the most egregious HIPAA violations. By law, anyone that discovers a HIPAA violation is required to report it. Here at Misericordia, you should report to your supervisor or Lindsay Wilkins, who oversees HIPAA compliance at Misericordia. Her number is listed here on the slide. If you are a supervisory figure, anyone who reports HIPAA violations to you, you must report immediately to Lindsay Wilkins, who will investigate the situation. Misericordia is required to report HIPAA violations to the Office of Civil Rights, also known as OCR.
Workplace violence.
Workplace violence is violence or the threat of violence against workers. It can occur outside the workplace and can range from threats and verbal abuse to physical assaults or even homicide. However it manifests itself, workplace violence is a growing concern for employers and employees nationwide. Workplace violence can strike anywhere, and no one is immune. Some employees, however, are at increased risk. Among them are workers who exchange money with the public, deliver packages or goods or services, or work alone in small groups during late night or early morning hours, in high crime areas, or in community settings and homes. Misericordia is committed to providing a safe environment and makes every effort to prevent violent incidents from occurring under the following guidelines. We have a zero tolerance policy of violence on campus. Any acts or threats of violence will result in immediate discharge. Firearms, weapons, or other dangerous or hazardous devices or substances are prohibited and not permitted to be carried onto the campus. Misericordia provides an environment that promotes open communication and will not retaliate against any individual making a report of violence or weapons in the workplace. If you witness violence or are a victim of workplace violence, please contact your supervisor or human resources immediately. Misericordia strives to secure the workplace with 24/7 security, video surveillance, extra lighting, alarm systems, and minimization of access to campus through identification badges and electronic keys. Employees who seek or obtain an order of protection are strongly encouraged to provide appropriate documents to human resources to ensure one's own safety and the safety of all employees, residents, and the campus. In addition to your personal address, it is encouraged to also include Misericordia, your employer, on the order of protection. Upon receiving a copy of the order of protection, the Misericordia security team and reception desks will be advised that the individual is not a welcome guest on campus, and if the individual should appear, that police should be called. At no time will an employee's schedule be released to any caller looking for an employee. We will work with any employee who provides us with an order of protection to assess the situation and determine what reasonable measures we can take to protect you, your coworkers, and our residents. Nothing can guarantee an employee will not become a victim of workplace violence. These steps, however, can help reduce the odds. Recognize, avoid, or diffuse potentially violent situations. Take action. Call reception at extension 3010, also known as 3010, to have security paged and alert your supervisor to any concerns about safety or security and report all incidents immediately. During a shift, keep your supervisor and your team apprised of your whereabouts when leaving the work area. Avoid traveling alone into unfamiliar locations or situations whenever possible. Misericordia is committed to the health and safety of all lives. Share your concerns. If you have reason to believe someone may be involved in a hostile situation, then take notice and report it. We can all do our part in keeping each other safe.
Pregnancy rights.
If you are pregnant, recovering from childbirth, or have a condition related to pregnancy, you have the right to ask for a reasonable accommodation. Examples of this could include more frequent bathroom breaks, assistance with certain tasks, a private space for expressing milk, or time off to recover from your pregnancy. In addition, you can continue working during your pregnancy, and you can reject an unsolicited accommodation offered by your employer for your pregnancy.
Corporate Compliance Program, CCP.
Misericordia Corporate Compliance Program, or CCP. Misericordia is committed to creating and maintaining an environment that promotes ethical conduct throughout the organization. The CCP was developed to promote and mobilize best practices with the intent to create a culture of compliance and adherence to ethical standards. What is corporate compliance? It's a system designed to prevent, detect, and resolve violations of the law, facility and state regulations, ethical standards, and organizational policies. Key elements of the CCP include policies and procedures to prevent, detect, and remedy unlawful or unethical behavior. An appointed corporate compliance officer who is responsible for investigating allegations of misconduct and other compliance issues. A corporate compliance committee to share in the oversight of the program. And lastly, communication of relevant laws, regulations, organizational policies, and ethical standards through employee training. Employees of Misericordia are expected to notify the corporate compliance officer of known or suspected illegal conduct or activities that violate agency policies, can use reporting mechanisms in place without fear of retribution, which falls under the False Claims Act or whistleblower policy.
The False Claims/Whistleblower Act. What is the False Claims Act, or FCA? The FCA prohibits the submission of false information or claims to the government and provides whistleblower protection for employees who, in good faith, bring forth complaints of possible violations of the FCA. Misericordia's FCA policy establishes procedures to comply with federal, state, and local FCA laws, and to prevent, detect, report, and correct incidents of fraud and abuse of Misericordia's resources. Some examples of this include theft of cash or supplies, billing for services not rendered, falsifying company records, improper destruction of property, and violations of governmental regulations. The False Claims/Whistleblower Act provides protection from retaliation for employees who bring forth complaints in good faith. Employees of Misericordia must conduct themselves in an ethical and legal manner. They are responsible for reporting potential or suspected waste, fraud, abusive acts, and other wrongdoings. They should report these to their supervisor or to the Human Resources Department without fear of reprisal or retaliation. Employees can also report to the fraud hotline. For English, the number is 833-376-0239. For Spanish, the number is 800-216-1288.
Tuberculosis. What is tuberculosis, or TB? TB is a disease that usually affects the lungs but can also affect other parts of the body. While not everyone with TB germs becomes sick, it is important to know the symptoms because inactive TB can become active over time. Latent TB is someone who has the TB germ in their bodies, but they are not sick because the germs are inactive and therefore cannot be spread to others. Active TB, someone is sick from the germs that are active in their body. They exhibit symptoms of the disease and can spread the disease to others. Physicians can prescribe drugs to cure TB. Symptoms of TB include a cough that lasts 3 weeks or longer, chest pain, coughing up blood or sputum, weakness or fatigue, fever, chills, loss of appetite, night sweats, and weight loss. What should you do if you are exposed to someone with active TB? Contact your healthcare provider and inform them you have been exposed. Your healthcare provider will help coordinate a TB test for you. Monitor yourself for any new symptoms. Tell your supervisor. What do you do if you develop symptoms of TB? Tell your healthcare provider. TB can be treated with medication. Your healthcare provider may monitor you throughout treatment to make sure that the medications are working properly. You should also tell your supervisor. Remember, only people with active TB can spread TB to others.
Cybersecurity. Email and computer security is a critical concern for individuals and organizations like Misericordia. Emails may contain sensitive information that should not fall into the wrong hands. If you do have to share resident information outside of Misericordia, please contact your director to ensure you are following the proper procedures. Here are some common issues related to email security. Weak, easily guessable passwords. Be sure to use strong passwords for each account consisting of a combination of upper and lowercase letters, characters, and numbers. Phishing emails occur when attackers use emails to trick users into giving up login credentials or personal information. To avoid this, be wary of unsolicited emails or links. Verify the sender's identity before clicking on links or downloading attachments. Malware is software that disrupts, damages, or gains access to computer systems. To avoid, never open links or attachments unless it is from a trusted source. Email spoofing occurs when attackers send emails that appear to come from a trusted source. Always be sure to check the domain name or email address before clicking any links or attachments. Secure communications. Misericordia employees are required to protect the personal information for residents and Misericordia staff. Misericordia staff also need to communicate with each other and external organizations as part of their day-to-day tasks. Using improved or secure communication tools will allow you to accomplish your task in a secure manner. So instead of using unsecure tools, such as standard texting applications, use AMS Connect, which is secure texting. Instead of using non-Misericordia email, use Misericordia Outlook. Instead of using unsecure email to external email addresses, use secure or encrypted emails. Instead of using Slack or other chat tools, use Teams Chat. Instead of using Google Drive or other cloud file storage, use Misericordia Network Drives, Teams, or OneDrive.
3 small steps from man, a giant leap for cybersecurity. Often we are in a hurry to download something for free. respond to an urgent email, grant access permissions to an app, or connect to a Wi-Fi network. Hold on. Are you reacting or are you thinking and acting? What happens when you click on something malicious? Data like your personal information, your contact list, may be stolen from your devices. Malware may enter business networks through personal devices and infect the network. Cybercriminals may gain access to business networks through backdoors and gain access to data. Next time, before you click, pause, think, and that one extra moment makes a big difference. Immediately delete suspicious emails from your inbox. Choose a secure Wi-Fi hotspot to connect. Always contact the help desk for their assistance, and do not grant unnecessary permissions for apps. Remember to always pause, think, and act.
Misuse of technology. As a reminder, every employee at Misericordia has signed the Acceptable Use of Technology policy. The use of any Misericordia technology, such as email, software, text, scanners, faxes, photocopiers, etc., is limited to Misericordia work only. Misuse of information services is prohibited and includes, but is not limited to, the following examples: attempting to modify or remove computer equipment, software, or additional programs without proper authorization. An example of this might be adding or deleting a software program on a laptop or removing an iPad from Misericordia without permission. Accessing computers, software, information, or networks to which Misericordia belongs, or accessing non-Misericordia sites without the proper authorization. An example of this might be looking at a residence chart in awards if that resident does not live in your area. Another example might be sharing your login information for AccuFund to allow another staff person to order supplies without permission. Taking actions without authorization that interfere with other people's ability to access Misericordia's information systems. Circumventing or attempting to circumvent login or other security measures. Using Misericordia's information systems for any illegal or unauthorized purposes such as social media, gaming, fundraising, or other activities. And personal use of information systems or electronic communications for non-Misericordia consulting, business, or employment. Congratulations! Now that you've completed the presentation, just take the quiz and inform your supervisor that you've completed the staff-related policies training. Please contact Staff Development if you'd like additional information on any of the topics covered at training@misericordia.com. Thank you.